Welcome to the Fathering Strong podcast, where we celebrate the incredible journeys of fathers who are making a difference. Hosted by Urban Light Ministry President and author, Pastor Eli Williams. Each week, we'll hear from an inspiring guest who will share their unique fatherhood story. We'll discuss the challenges, triumphs, and lessons learned along the way, offering valuable insights and encouragement for all dads. Join us as we explore the power of fatherhood and build a brighter future for our families.
Well, hello and welcome, everyone. This is the Fathering Strong podcast. I am Eli Williams, and my guest today is Dr. David Mabry. So glad to have you, David. Thanks for joining us today.
Well, thank you for having me. It's a privilege. I've been looking forward to this.
And so have I. David, we like to begin each time with our guest's own fatherhood story. And we found that everybody has one. Good,
Yep.
bad, or indifferent, everybody's story. We have something to learn from everyone's story. So it's how we get started. And with you, we'd like for you to tell us about your own father, what life was like growing up in the Mabry household.
Yeah. So my story is I came from a very dysfunctional family. It was my parents had a challenging marriage with one another. Made it 26 years. It was I think it was about 26 years when their divorce was final. When I was in my 20s, I had three other brothers, and I have three other brothers, and so we were raised in a pretty dysfunctional household. My mom was a lot more emotional and volatile, and my dad was more quiet and laid back and passive. And I think the challenging marriage threw him off his game quite a bit as far as fatherhood is concerned. Early years, I remember a little bit more pleasant experience. And as time went, I just think he was worn down with that dysfunction. And so but overall, my dad was largely disengaged with us. He worked in a factory. Worked in a factory. He came home and watched TV, and then he got up the next morning early and went to work in the factory. And so that was my experience, as largely a father that was disengaged. And to be honest, that greatly influences the way that I am a father today and a husband today, because I flipped the script.
So you determined that you were going to father in an opposite way from your father.
Yeah, absolutely. And for me, Eli, and you could poke and prod around this, and so I'll try to give a short version, and then we could poke and prod to your whatever direction you want to go. But for me, it was December 17th of 1985. I surrendered my life to Jesus Christ, and when that transformation happened, Eli, I was a different person. And I said, coming away from that, and God really developed in my life this determination that I was not going to have the same kind of household that I grew up in. I was going to be a different father, and I was going to be a different husband than what I saw. That's not to throw great shade or blame on my father. I think he had some challenges. I think his circumstances, he probably had it in his personality that he wasn't going to be a very proactive individual. But and I have love for my father, who passed away in 2015.
I'm sorry.
So I don't have any ill will or unresolved forgiveness, because I've gone through that here at 54 years old. Although I still feel the effects of it, there's a lot of healing that's happened. So the determination coming away from that, and as a teenager, life transformation, and then I had a direction, and I was very proactive and engaged as a father as a result of that, and as a husband as well.
Yeah, expand on that forgiveness a little bit. We talk about that frequently anytime we're working with dads, because there's so many young men, some not so young, who are carrying around the baggage of the hurt and the disappointment, and sometimes even the abuse of their own fathers. And we always advise them to forgive, to begin the forgiveness process. How did that happen with you? Is it something that you innately knew that you needed to do, or did you have some training or some counseling or something that guided you in
Yeah.
forgiving?
Yeah, that's a good question. Probably, well, experientially being able to kind of number one, walk out my faith and figure out what does this mean. But there are layers to the onion, right? Is it? I tell young people today, especially as they're kind of dealing with their own father hunger and challenges from their family of origin, which we call in our marriage work, which I would probably get to, but we call it FOOIE, FOOIE, family of origin impacts everything. And so our FOOIE, my FOOIE, it's just decade by decade is how I kind of divide it. The layers of the onion are peeled back, and you find a new challenge. If you dealt with it as a child, there's new challenges to work through as 20 something, as a 30 something, as a 40 something, now even in my 50s. And in my 50s now, it's hitting just caring for an aging mother who was a challenger her whole life, but now being able to, what's the best way to love someone who was not very nice to us growing up, but what's the best way to love her now in her older age? It's to keep her safe, protect her, and help her to have dignity toward the end of her life. For my father, that forgiveness was I think there's an initial forgiveness that happens, and then it's a working out of that forgiveness. That was my experience of what that looked like as time went, of trying to initiate relationship as an adult and saying, I own some responsibility, but then having healthy boundaries for when that relationship is spurred or when the other doesn't, my father not, when I was an adult, him not responding up until his death in 2015 of that trying to initiate on my part. He remarried and had and kind of adopted that new family, and for me, it's trying to working through that. So yeah.
Yeah.
What do you?
But
I was curious, Eli, if I could ask a question back because
sure.
your question. What as you work with the father hunger issue and the father forgiveness issue with folks, what percentage do you think are out there are having these challenges with forgiveness or reconciling it maybe a difficult upbringing with their father?
Oh, 70, 80%,
Yeah.
something like that in my experience with the fathers that I've worked with.
Yeah.
Yeah. And for some, they're still carrying it around. There's bitterness. And then there are the others, a good number of them who have done what you did. They've turned that into a drive to be the father they wish they had had.
Yes.
And that usually turns out pretty well. I mean, those are some of the best fathers we've ever worked with, because they've taken what their father gave them or didn't give them and used it as fuel to become the best fathers they can be. But sadly, many of them don't really understand how much damage their unforgiveness is doing to them and to the other relationships in their lives, including their own children.
Yeah. Do you think you think that comes from a woundedness, and then
Sure.
they lack the tools
Sure.
to many times we don't have that tool in our tool belt to pull out relationally
Right.
to kind of even
Yeah.
function, right? Is
Yeah.
that what you're
Yeah.
seeing?
That's right. Absolutely. So we devote quite a bit of time to talking about the forgiveness process.
Yeah.
There's a book called Total Forgiveness. Perhaps you've read it, and it provides some guidelines. First of all, identifying what is forgiveness,
Yes.
and what it isn't,
Yep.
and the step-by-step process for beginning the journey of forgiveness, and then knowing when that forgiveness has been complete. And that simply speaking is when you remember, because you don't forget. You remember, but you no longer have the negative emotions associated with it. You're
Yeah.
no longer hurt. You're no longer bitter.
Yeah.
You're no longer angry. That means that the forgiveness has taken root. The forgiveness is complete. The goal is not to forget. The goal is to no longer feel the pain,
Yeah.
or to feel the anger.
For me, it also took on a life, which I'm guessing. I'd be curious what you see in your experience, since this is the tip of the spear for you and your helping people. And that is, it's as I grew and matured, it's having empathy for my father and even for my mom, and of where they were in life, of their own special challenges, emotional instability, their own family of origin. And as much as I can shake my fist at heaven all I want of why didn't I have a better childhood? But there comes a point where I just have to say, what about their journey and their experience? And were they wrong? Did they do a great job? No. Did they do a horrible job? Yeah, many times that horrible job. But to be able to have empathy and go, okay, I have to think, okay, what were they going through? I mean, for my father, during my mainly pre-adolescent and then through my adolescent years, my mother would leave the house and disappear for days or weeks on end. And so my father's passivity, add that to, and so it's kind of like, well, what was my father to do? But as a teenager, we had my brothers and myself, we had these great needs. We had our own emotional needs, relational needs, and those were being unmet from our father and obviously from our mother. But it's at that moment, it's really difficult to kind of walk through, and it does mark you here and here. But as an adult, and as that layers of the onion come off, it's being able to go, okay, boy, Dad went through a rough time.
Yeah.
And he didn't have the equipment already. He kind of leaned toward passivity because he's that generation and you blame it on generation, but there's the generation that's kind of, they probably raised by a pretty cold father, but felt that father was doing the best because I was providing. That's my job. So yeah.
Good stuff. Thank you for sharing that. There were a lot of gems there that you just dropped. Yeah. So we could probably go down any of those pathways and have a whole session just on those. So then you became a father. Yeah. So talk about your own fathering journey.
Yeah. This is it's really fun because Eli, I love being a husband. I love my wife to death. She is, a great match for me. And I love Teresa dearly. And it's why we work closely in the work that we do now with marriages and family and parenting. But I love being a father. And I say this phrase, and so I love the question because it gives me another chance to brag on my children, to share about the great joy. I've loved every phase, every challenge that it's presented, and every joy and mountaintop that it's given. I really have. Not hyperbole. I really have. So I have 3 children. Alex is our oldest, and then he's married to Katie, and they have 2 children, our 2 grandchildren. And then Taylor, she's our daughter, and she's the middle child. And then our youngest, our 3rd child, is a son, and he's married to Kenzie. And they're all in their 20s now. The oldest is he's in his last year of that decade, so about to head into his 30s. And but this whole parenting through the phases, and so here's part of the answer as well. As far as parenting, of course, Teresa, my wife, came from a very functional household, and so she saw things modeled really well. Not perfect, but really well. And my family, of course, highly dysfunctional, very imperfect. And so when you enter into parenting, right, we really don't have a script. We don't have a playbook. We don't have what you have is your FUI, your family of origin, right? And so it's thinking through, so for me, I just knew that I was going to do the opposite. I was going to engage with my children. I was going to show them love. But early on, when Alex was very, very young, and then Taylor was only 14 months later, so they were very close in age. But we had some really good friends through our church that I was on staff at a church as a youth pastor. And I remember turning to the father, and he had well-behaved children. And I wondered, hey, I asked him, what's your secret of fatherhood? And Eli, I remember distinctly what he said to me. He looked right at me and he said, David, do you really want to know? I was like, do I really want to know? Yeah, I asked the question. He said, because what I'm about to answer, there's some truth here that you'll need to hear, and if you really want to know it, I'll share what I do. What he did over the next several months is he and his wife mentored Teresa and myself in parenting. And there was a specific program that they took us through, and we did a study, and then some other parents at their same stage of life that we were joined us. And we went through this parenting course, but it was a lot of relational with it, with just learning from. And it helped me to have just hooks to hang my hat and my jacket and tools to turn it. And I'm telling you what, Eli, having a parenting class, learning how to practically be a father. And now this is a biblically based one too. So it helped me. And I was very much a student of the Bible. So it helped me to kind of have scripture speaking to it as well. So for me, that's my journey with love my children. My journey I was really rough, but very well intended. And then all of a sudden I was really hungry for a practical way forward. And this class and this relationship, this really helped. And our children, I believe their lives were changed. Our children's lives were changed because of that and because of my surrender to Christ when I was in adolescence. Their lives are totally different.
Yeah. I'd love to hear more about that class. So what is your biggest challenge? As you look back over your parenting journey, what has been your biggest challenge?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think that maybe a good answer is that you're entering. I suspect this is a challenge for many, and I'd be curious of your input, especially all your work with fathers. Is that I suspect one of the biggest challenge would be having not traveled a space and then traveling it for fresh and new, and you're really left to. I mean, you can learn from others, but you really need to navigate things everywhere from like very specific to our household and some of the challenges with our children to general items of behavior or what do you do when your pre-adolescent daughter comes to you and she's really dealing with emotions, or like how do you handle that? It's like no one gives you a 1, 2, 3 checklist, right? And so I think the challenge is facing territory that we haven't faced before, and now having faced it, like, yeah, ask me, I'll tell you when they're going through X, Y, and Z, this is what we did, and we found it to be helpful, and we recommend. But at the same time, not looking back with regrets, right? As far as, because we were very proactive. But yeah, what challenges are you hearing from people as you, and for you, what do you think that has been for you?
Well, the first part of that, it's all over the board. Usually fathers will tell me about a particular child who challenged them in raising a particular child. You probably have found that every child is different.
Yes.
And some are more challenging than others.
Absolutely.
So that's where it goes usually with that question. And then I follow up with, what have been your greatest joys of parenting?
Yeah.
How would you answer that?
Yeah. To your point on the challenges is that we always say that children they're independent moral agents.
Yeah.
So we can't force them to do what you train them up, you show them the direction, you try your parenting techniques, but really they're going to make independent moral decisions, and we just prayerfully move them along. We were blessed, by the way, that none of our children, I would say, I would ever consider that any of our children were extra challenging. I think normal range challenging. And I think parents have to be ready. And I was kind of prepared for this, knowing that, because I was a challenging child, not only coming from dysfunction, but I was not I think I was acting out of some of that woundedness and pain, but I misbehaved in school, graduated near the bottom of my class. So much of that dysfunction came out. And if it wasn't for the grace of God, he flipped things around. The greatest joys, wow, Eli, it's trying to narrow it. Every morning waking up and seeing my children and watching an illustration could be when Alex, our oldest, was just a 1 year old or maybe 2 years old. I would come home to our old apartment because we didn't have two nickels to rub together. And I'd come home from work and I could picture it now as I'm telling the story of him. We had a flight of stairs. You had to walk up to a second level. And at the top was this gate to the living room. And so he would be standing there holding on to it, and he'd see me come in the front door, and he'd just that big old smile, and he'd just be moving his feet up and down. And I mean, getting chills telling the story, right? Yeah. Because that is one of my greatest joys, is that daily, day in, day out, being able to see and enjoy and be with my children.
Good stuff. Good stuff.
We're blessed. And to be a father, and I'm hoping that this is a message to the whole audience, right? Is that being a father, we get to do this. Yeah. This is a privilege and an honor, and we're not perfect, but I love how Scripture says that it encourages us to be perfect as your heavenly Father is perfect, or move on to perfection. It talks about that. And not everyone maybe listening may be familiar with that, and that's fine. But just from my it's that Scripture really talks about a maturing, kind of like a flower in bloom, that it moves on to maturity. Now, is the flower perfect? No, but it can be. When it's in full maturity, you would look at it and go, that flower is perfect. And that's what we really like. We may not be perfect in everything we do, but boy, we can experience that fullness of maturity, or we could do our best, which our best really does. When we're really efforting, it does make a difference in the lives of our children.
It absolutely does. Hey, thanks for that. My guest today is Dr. David Mabry. He's Executive Director of Encompass. Let me get it right now, because you changed your name on me. Encompass Connection Center. Did I get it right?
That's right.
Excellent. And we'll talk about his work at Encompass on the other side of this break. This is the Fathering Strong podcast. I'm Eli Williams. Thanks for being with us today. We'll return after this brief timeout.
Looking to be the best dad you can be? The Fathering Strong podcast is your guide. Hosted by Pastor Eli Williams. Each episode features inspiring conversations with dads who are making a difference. Learn valuable strategies for building strong families, tackle tough fatherhood issues, and get motivated to be your best self. Never miss an episode. Subscribe to the Fathering Strong podcast on YouTube, Spotify, or Apple Podcasts. Your subscription helps us provide free services and resources to families in need. Don't wait. Subscribe to the Fathering Strong podcast today and join our community of dads committed to building strong families. Together, let's make a difference.
Welcome back. This is the Fathering Strong podcast. I'm Eli Williams, and David Mabry. Dr. David Mabry is my guest today, and he is with the Encompass Connection Center. And before we launch back in, David, I just want to let people know, if they're hearing some snoring in the background, that's not me. That actually it's David's pooch.
Yeah, you can see just an edge of her down there if the camera's covering it. She's a Great Pyrenees lab mix. She's a large beast, but we always say she's a lover, not a fighter. And and we always say too, she needs a therapy human, rather than a therapy pet. She's a sweetheart, but she can snore. Well, just she needs a CPAP machine on her. So.
Well, it's not a problem, David. So let's talk about Encompass now. You became the executive director there, within a year? Has it been a year?
It was summer of 24, so just not even been a year yet.
Okay, yeah. So what led you into that? What were you doing before, and what led you into your work with Encompass? And then we'll talk about what Encompass does.
Yeah, I've been in full-time ministry inside and outside the church, and much of that working with families, marriages in some way or another for 35 years. And so my wife and I have been leading a marriage and family ministry called One Another Relationships for the last several years. We actually started doing that because I worked for the same organization, Encompass, I worked for them when they were previously known as Marriage Resource Center, 2006 to about 2008. And then I left and went and did a lead pastor position at a church after that for about 10 years. And so because of that work we did previously from 2006 to 2008, we launched our own thing, One Another Relationships. And you can still find some of that material, especially on YouTube. You can just do a search for One Another Relationships and there's content there. But then from that as well, I took a position, not to get too detailed or in the weeds too much, but I right before coming to Encompass, I was the dean of the graduate school for Berkeley College. The main campus is based out of Kansas. It's a small town in Kansas, but I oversaw the graduate school, and that's all the students are online. And within that program, I oversaw, and I still do oversee, the Masters of Arts in Family Ministry. So because of that connection, because of our work with one another, the previous executive directors of Encompass came to my wife and I, Teresa and myself, and they asked us to consider consider coming and applying for the position. They were retiring, and Laverne and Rhonda Nisley are the previous directors. And so we applied for the position and went through the vetting process, and lo and behold, we transitioned then from one another, doing that more fully and doing the academic work, and now doing Encompass as our primary work. So my wife is a co-director. I'm the executive director, and she's director of operations for the organization.
Yeah, very, very good friends with them. In fact, just had coffee today with Laverne. We had
Yeah,
a great time together.
yeah,
Um,
wonderful people.
yes, absolutely are. They built quite the organization there, and uh, Encompass, formerly Marriage Resource Center, has made a deep impact
Yeah,
on the local community. And those of you who are watching this from other communities, there probably is some kind of marriage or relationship agency or ministry in your community. If not, there needs to be. There'd be something to pray about.
yeah.
Um, so let's talk about the work of Encompass.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. Well, thanks for putting a plug in, and I'll add to what you're saying. If it's a good shout out to folks that are outside of our immediate area in our county who need marriage services, because of the groundwork that the Nisleys laid and what has been established, we actually are available to people. We really don't have geographic boundaries, and so like Teresa and I just spoke at a retreat in Maryland recently, up in the Cleveland area. We coach couples from all over the nation. Our assessment that is done online, and I'll cover some of these in general, but we have an assessment online that is taken nationwide. And so our reach is, so folks need connection with what we do. It is available outside of our area, but it is also true that it's made a huge impact. The organization was started 20 years ago by local community leaders, including Eli. You were involved with these conversations and this work. Local community leaders inside and outside of the church, some of them government leaders in the county, wanting to make an impact on the high divorce rate within the county. And so that's where the Marriage Resource Center was birthed. And now today, as Encompass, Encompass is you could say that expertise is just healthy relationships that's holistic and across the board. So in other words, our cornerstone is still marriage work, couples work. And we run a program called Rings. But then we also hit 3 other areas. We found that we can impact singles. So we have a program called Reach that focuses on singles. And many of those are single mothers and women who are seeking to have healthy relationships and in order to impact maybe those future couple relationships. And then we have a 3rd program, which is our parenting program. And then finally, we found that there was the Nisleys found previously. And so they established a program for healthy relationships in the workplace environment. So those are our 4 areas: for couples, for individuals, for parents, and then for a workplace environment. And our programs can be implemented in all of those programs.
Are each of those programs available online?
Yes. So everything is online based. So we have courses that are built for each one. And someone from New Jersey, from California, from locally to us can all go online and take our courses, whether it's in Rings or Reach, Parenting for Kids' Sake, or Work Smart, Live Well. Someone could go on and do that program and just grab the course and take it. But we couple with all of those programs. There is a live version of each, but also we couple with every one of those. We have coaches or facilitators trained to come along, folks. So if a couple takes our assessment, takes the program, the Rings program, they can meet with a marriage or couple coach on a regular basis to help walk them through the material. It's an optional option, but many people take advantage of that option. And the same thing for all of our programs. We have coaches, trained individuals who can walk folks through and learn healthy relationships within whatever context of those four major areas.
So if someone wants to volunteer, I suppose they're volunteers, to be a trainer or a coach, talk about that process.
Yeah, they can do it as a volunteer. So here's the beauty, Eli, is that we have two major options. There's some details with this, but the two big rocks for each of the programs is someone can be trained to be facilitator or coach within our system. And those are paid facilitators. There's a small stipend for every session that an individual would run. So you could come to the organization, be trained in the material, and then as you train or as you facilitate and coach people, you're paid for those services. The other option is actually we train folks to use the material within their context, and then we offer licensing for use in their context, whether it's a church or outside of the church environment. So it can be interchangeable. So an individual from New Jersey, California, Texas, wherever, can come to us and say, hey, we really like your Rings program. Train us how to use that. And we want to then use that within our program. And what we do is we train them, license them, and then they bring in their own clientele or individuals who could be helped with that material. So our content can be replicated really easily within other people's context. And then they can do whatever they want as far as a fee structure, or if they want to do it within maybe their organization's all set up and there's no fees at hand. Like we just working with this church in Maryland, the church said, hey, we're interested in this Rings material. So all of their folks doing marriage work and couples work there, they're going to be trained in Rings, and then they can offer that for within their ministry context. It's already natural there.
So how do you ensure fidelity to your programming? Is there some kind of recertification process? Is there some way in which you can monitor their activities?
That's a really good question, and it's when they sign up for the facilitation training, we do have an agreement signed about how best use and also required use for the material. But Eli, to be honest, there is within that, we make sure these are best practices and these are non-negotiables, but really we try to keep those really tight because we want to give freedom and allow people, hey, if they've gone through the training, they pay for the training, they pay for the access to the material, then use it best within your context. And we try not to control it too much, but just we want to help people. We want people to have healthy relationships because, like for me, if my parents maybe if they had help, maybe if they had the right tools, maybe if they had the right people coming alongside them, maybe my story would be totally different for how I was brought up. So our vision, our family trees forever changed. And that's really, and we add on because of the workplace environment, we say family trees and organizational structures forever changed, using timeless skills and change of mindset.
Yeah, I love that. It's a great mission.
Yeah.
So do you have any particular experiences you want to share, any success stories that might come to mind that you'd want to talk about?
Yeah, and I want to be careful of confidentiality, but at the same time, this is a story that we see over and over again. And so recently, sitting with a a couple that have been together for about 4 years. They have a child together, and they share with me during an intake appointment, initial appointment, that they really want to change their family. They talked about their family of origin and background, and they said, we don't want to repeat that. We want to change how we do things. They're highly motivated, but they're really, the key areas that they were most challenged by are communication and conflict resolution, right? It's kind of like they face these normal range challenges and they become non-normal. They become so large because they lack those tools in their tool belt to go to. So instead of going like this, they're going like this when it comes to whose role is it to take the garbage out? Who does the dishes? Are we going to buy a house or not? Is it time for us to have another child? I mean, everything from the mundane and daily to the large life-altering decisions. But how are they? It could be a big fight over those, or it can be, we need the right tools so we can work through it. And so I think of this couple that I met with this last week that they clearly didn't have the right tools. They know they don't have the right tools. And furthermore, they know how to be successful in business. They share about their business. And I used the illustration with them. I said, if I asked you to do X, Y, and Z in the business world, you would know what tools to go to be successful. And you've done that. Now, relationally, it's having the right tools going forward. So we have folks that are really in major conflict. We call them conflicted couples or devitalized couples. But then you also have, and this goes for non-couples too, for just relationships in general. But we also have premarital. Eli, I'm a firm believer. I believe every couple should go through a premarital preparation process. And we offer our program for everyone that's about to be married, or they're thinking, hey, let's spend our lives together. Why not gain some tools in your tool belt for success for that? Because if you want it long-term, a long-term relationship, and folks that sign on the dotted line and say, I want to be with this person for the rest of my life, no one enters that going, I'm going to just try it out for a few weeks, if they really are making that jumping in the deep end on that relationship. So we say, okay, why not invest in those relationships going forward? And so right now we always have a regular amount of premaritals with us. And right now we have a couple that just, it's so fun to see them just all starry-eyed and life is perfect. And that person I'm with is perfect. But we know after being married all these years, life is not always perfect. Individual's not perfect. And we need to have the equipment to navigate those imperfections of life.
Yeah, I mean, no doubt you do good work there. I remember early on, just at the beginning of the creation of the Marriage Resource Center, we had a community pact, so to speak,
Yep.
a covenant in which every pastor in town, in the county, was invited to come and to sign this document that says, I will not marry anyone no couples, unless they have agreed to premarital counseling. And that I think was the beginning of making a big difference. We actually, over time, saw our divorce rate go down.
Absolutely.
Because everybody was on not everybody, but probably 95% of the clergy in town said, yes, this is right. Sign me up. I'm not going to marry them if they're not willing to have premarital counseling. That'd be a good thing for every community.
Absolutely. And we see in the schools right now, Eli, that there's a push for, and it's been implemented for financial competency, for basic financial competency for students going into, so that they don't make really poor decisions they launch into life. And I think there's a nice parallel, maybe even more important, of having some relational competency and learning some skills that can make a difference in what you do going forward and how you relate. It's all about changing family trees. And to your point, we see the evidence. 20 years later, we saw that evidence pick up. Within 5 years, there was a great improvement in the divorce rate within our community, and then to this day, it stays really low, below the state average. And I believe it's because of this effort from the community, with the center point, the center of that being the work of Encompass.
Yeah, no doubt. So before we take the next break, why don't you touch on the funding? Do these couples, these individuals, do they pay a fee for the services that you render, or are there grants, or just how do you go about underwriting your work?
Yeah, there's 3 different streams to help us do this important work. And one of those streams is fee for service. There are folks that can pay for services, and they do. And that includes services not only for couples or individuals who need it, clientele, you could say, but also for folks that are being trained in facilitation. So we have revenue streams for the organization through pay for service. There's a second stream, which would be grants. And so we still have a local government that is partnering with us for grants in that way, as well as other grants that come our direction from generous organizations and foundations that want to support this work, and they have a vision for it as well. And the third stream are individuals, businesses and individuals who support the work. And that's a critical piece. While we have the generosity of grants and we have opportunity through fees for service, we would not exist if it weren't for just countless individuals who have been generous over the years with, just giving. We have a Power of Two program, like $22 a month. And that's that program, along with others where individuals could be generous and support and pay it forward for folks who have had their relationships transformed as well.
Excellent. We're going to take our final time out, and when we come back, I want to ask you about the vision of the future for Encompass and for the Mabry family. So stay with us. This is the Fathering Strong podcast. I'm Eli Williams. We'll continue with our guest, Dr. David Mabry, after this break.
Children benefit significantly from the presence of committed, loving, nurturing fathers. Strong fathers contribute to stable families and safe, healthy communities. Fathering Strong connects, engages, and empowers fathers. Join the fatherhood movement at fatheringstrong.com to discover a wealth of resources, from inspiring videos to informative articles and instructive courses. By subscribing to our resources, you're not just helping yourself, you're helping Fathering Strong provide these valuable tools to families in need. Visit fatheringstrong.com, download the app, and subscribe to our YouTube channel today. Together, let's build stronger families and communities.
Welcome back, everybody. Hello, this is the Fathering Strong podcast. I'm Eli Williams, and my guest is Dr. David Mabry. We've been talking about Encompass Connection Center, just fascinating and very effective work going on there. David, what's the future look like for Encompass?
Yeah. Well, the first and foremost, the 2 initial answers would be, first, what our future looks like is greatly impacted by our well-established and stabilized past. And so for the organization's been around 20 years, the vast majority of the years, 18 or 19 of those, were led by the previous executive directors, the Nisleys that we spoke about already. And their work organizationally, the stability, the financial health is there. So that greatly impacts our ability going forward, right? And so the other thing is the mission that is established. It's the work that's already fruitful in the moment. And we have, when Teresa and I took this leadership role halfway through 24, we said, because things were so healthy and stable, we said, hey, the future for the immediate is stay stable, status quo. We're not going in to rock the boat or make major changes, because great work is happening in those areas that I've already mentioned. But I'd say that heading into the end of 25 and 26 on, the vision is to say this, and you alluded to it earlier, and I appreciate that, is that, we're really fortunate in this area to have a healthy, vibrant organization like Encompass, and it can be replicated. And so I envision that the expansion and availability of these services beyond our borders. We've had a lot of conversations throughout the state of Ohio for folks that want to adopt our work and to replicate. And one of the possibilities that may look like whether it's satellite locations or locations and individuals that can do this work within their given communities. We have the administrative infrastructure, we have the courses, we have so much set. It's a matter right now, it's locations for folks to meet in person and then individuals trained within those given communities. And so I envision an expansion beyond the borders of our county, and even more so than what we've had before. I think adding to that, as far as programmatically, sharpening the processes that we have already. We're hitting key areas. Let's improve even more. Let's pay attention to technology and what's available to us for coursework online. So I think it's expanding those to make it so much more available to folks that are out there and in need.
Well, that's exciting. And we wish you all the best in all of that. So, David, what would be your concluding message for those who may be watching today, perhaps potentially could benefit from some of your services, and perhaps there are others who might want to get behind you with support or by offering their volunteer services?
Yeah, absolutely. We consider first and foremost, anyone that wants to join us in this work in any way, shape, or form, financially or volunteer, or if someone's hearing this from any community within the United States and you're saying, hey, how can we do this within our community, then we want to encourage you to reach out to us as soon as possible. You can catch me directly. Our website is the best way to find that information. And I'm sure, Eli, you're going to provide it through show notes or however you disseminate that information, but we're easy to find. It's Encompass Connection Center. And if you do a search, if folks even do a search for that. And so look us up, reach out, share your interest in becoming involved. You may be listening today and you want to financially support this and this work. And we call folks that join us in that way, we call them champions, because it's not just built around one individual or a couple, Teresa and myself, but it's this army of people who are investing in transformational change within marriages, couples, and folks' relationships and parenting as well. So champions for this, if you want to be a champion for it, the best way is to reach out directly, and we'll connect you with the ways of exploring and finding out. I would be most excited about, to be honest, I mean, the financial help is wonderful, but if folks reached out and said, we want to do this in our community, we would bend over backwards to serve you and help you to do that. That's our heart passion. Let's replicate this. And we don't care about getting credit. We want people's lives changed.
That's excellent. The website is encompasscc.org, encompasscc.org. David's email address is david@encompasscc.org.
Yes.
Thank you, friend. Appreciate you taking the time and sharing with our audience here on what you do there at Encompass and a little bit about you and your family and your sleepy dog.
Yes, exactly. Eli, thanks so much for having me. And if it helps us to make a difference in people's lives, then this is all worth it, right?
Yes, sir. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Well, that's all for today's edition of the Fathering Strong podcast, friends. We hope you'll join us again next week for another edition of Fathering Strong. Also, don't forget about our weekly blog posts, which you can sign up for. Why not get notifications about the blog posts and the podcasts as they come out? You simply do that by taking advantage of our free subscription. You can find that at our website, which is urbanlight.org or fatheringstrong.com. That's urbanlight.org or fatheringstrong.com. We'd be happy to add you to the list. We'll see you next time on Fathering Strong.
Thanks for joining us on another episode of the Fathering Strong podcast. We hope you found the conversation inspiring and helpful. To make sure you don't miss out on future episodes, subscribe to the Fathering Strong podcast on YouTube, Spotify, or Apple Podcasts. Just search for Fathering Strong in your favorite app. The Fathering Strong podcast is brought to you by Urban Light Ministries, a nonprofit organization with a 3-decade legacy dedicated to turning the hearts of fathers to their children. Thanks to your support, we're able to keep this podcast and many other resources free for dads everywhere. To learn more about Urban Light Ministries or to donate and help us continue this important work, visit urbanlight.org. The Fathering Strong podcast is a production of Urban Light Ministries. Eli Williams is your host, and Bruce Stapleton of the Movementum Group is the producer and engineer. Our theme music is provided by saxophonist Harold Rayford.